Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I am Daniel Torres, and I'm joined by my most beloved co-host, Efrain Rosario. We've been together since 22. How are you, Efrain? Happy third anniversary. Actually, nearly fourth anniversary and beginning of 26.
Yeah. No, and I mean, we've known each other longer than that, but yes, from a podcast anniversary, yeah, we're at a 3.5-year mark, or 3 years and 6 months. Maybe more, no, 9 months, I guess. Sorry, I'm counting.
Yeah. I explained to someone yesterday how we met, which I invite anyone that meets us at events to ask us the funny story behind our relationship.
Yeah. I don't think they could come up with it. I don't think they could imagine it.
No, I don't think so. How I know that you're in Madrid today. How's that? Is it warm, by the way?
I think it's getting warmer, so I think they're actually having a bit of a heat wave this week. So I think it's still quite lovely here for those who are maybe pining for summer days. Now I think you and I have actually traded places. So you're in my neck of the woods. So how is Amsterdam?
I'm actually specifically in the neighborhood of the Pipe,
So you're actually in my neighborhood. You're in my local neighborhood.
I could see graffiti saying your name all around. It's all tagged saying Efrain Rosario. It's actually, yesterday was lovely. I even went for a run to the Vondel Park and around the park and back, which was nice. And today it's rainy and grey, but all good.
Oh, so it's fairly typical for fall time. So yeah.
I had a meeting yesterday and the guy was like, it's lovely. It's very unusual. Must be climate change or something. And in another meeting that I had yesterday, I had a debate with who I met of she's claimed that we were a retail media podcast. I claimed that we weren't, that we're more generalistic. But actually, as things are, we're going to talk about retail media today. So
yeah, so she's probably gonna think that that she won the debate.
Exactly. I have to write her later and admit to it. But yeah, probably people are gonna say, "Oh, we didn't have this guest already," because he's one of the top voices out there in retail media. We're joined by no other than the global media lead, retail and performance at Diageo. But I would say probably retail media legend or top voice at least, Roger Dunn. Hey, Roger, how are you?
Hey guys, good to be here. Yeah, what an honor. It's been a long time coming, but good to be part of the famous podcast.
Thank you for having us, and thank you for joining at a particularly not so late, but let's say a little bit in the afternoon in your neck of the woods.
We probably for context, Roger is based in, is it Sydney?
Yeah, down in Sydney. Yeah, Maribor Beach.
Yeah. I think it's not our first guest to come from down under, but one of the few that have come from there. And yeah, I think you coming to this podcast, Roger, is one of those that is me going to Morocco, for example, which is an hour flight from Barcelona, but you always think, I'll go there someday. It's going to be easy. And then it doesn't happen. So I'm glad that we finally got down to do it.
Yeah, so I remember I'm from the UK as well, so I'm definitely an FMCG guy rather than a CPG guy.
Your accent though is deviating from that. You sound like Aussie to me. You probably sound Aussie to European. Probably sound Aussie to the British and British to the Aussie. No,
that's right. Yeah, wherever you go, you always sound like you might be from somewhere else. But I'm fine with that. I think I speak fairly British, but we'll go.
You're a world citizen, Roger. Let's call it that. You're a man of the world. Speaking of which, we actually had the chance to connect with Roger live and in person. I guess it was probably about almost a year ago, wasn't it? In terms of when you were in the UK. Because little known fact, and I guess Daniel, you alluded to it. So, you and I work at the same company, although we've only had that one occasion where you and I have actually met in person, both being in the Diageo offices.
That's right. Yeah, I think it was actually earlier this year, so not so long ago, but it feels like a while.
It was in
Oh,
February. It was in February.
Was it
Yeah,
February?
great.
Wow, it seems like I think I must be thinking in fiscal years.
So many
It's my
things have
Diageo
happened. So
going.
many things. We do so many
Yeah,
things that feels like years ago.
yeah.
But
But I
been
think
long.
exactly. But as a segue, I think given that you and I are both at the same company, but obviously not based in the same geographic location, we do get the chance from time to time to be able to interact with one another. But can you start by giving us a little bit of context in regards to your current role at Diageo? Because I think it's a really interesting one, and to Daniel's introduction, obviously speaks to the retail media topic quite closely.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, it's a global role looking after retail media. So that involves working in with a lot of our markets and our hubs, helping build out the strategy and the best practice around that. So we built a number of different playbooks that help or are aimed there to help the teams kind of develop out. Working with a number of key partners as well. So we'll be speaking to more of the global partners to really develop out JVPs and have build those relationships, making sure we're unlocking access, unlocking data there. Obviously, as data is a key part of retail media. And obviously just taking part in a number of the different sessions that we have. So I collaborate pretty closely with the commerce teams, as you'd imagine. And obviously with the media teams as well, as we pull it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, currently you're part of are you part of the global digital team now?
Well, part of the global media team. So
Global media team.
yeah, for us, retail media is generally media. So it sits within that media team within.
But what's interesting, right, obviously, is that because of the role that you are in terms of retail media, you kind of, in essence, interact quite closely across those two teams, media and digital. And you and I get to interact more from a commercial standpoint as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as I'm sure many of your listeners will know, like retail media is this bridge often between different departments. It gets funded from a few different pots in many orgs. So it is something that we need to collaborate on, which is a fun part of the job, really. It's bringing it together and working with the brand teams, working with the commerce team, the commercial teams, and there's always a lot going on. Let's put it that way.
And a lot of people may be even surprised that they know your name and have seen you on LinkedIn, but maybe they're surprised that you're actually like a actual practitioner. You actually have a full-time job in a multinational. But like your other facet is that you're like a LinkedIn influencer, I would say. You'd probably never call yourself that, but I can call you that. And you actually even have the top voice badge on your profile. I'm curious to know, well, what made you start putting content out there on LinkedIn, which by the way, will put obviously your profile on the show notes, but what made you start putting content out there, and how did you get that badge, by the way?
Yeah, well, there is actually a bit of a story behind that because back in the day, I was at agency side. So I was at Group M, Mediacom, and then Group M itself quite some time ago. I think at least a decade. And they had a bit of a competition. It was like the agency influencer competition. So people could put themselves forward and then they would just track all of the posts, all the engagement. And then they'd end up putting people in a ranking table. And yeah, I ended up winning that and in that small time, like 3-month competition. And then I just kind of never stopped. I think I got used to it. You kind of make it part of your day, and it's just a good way to share some insights and connect with people as well. It's always been a real positive in terms of what I get out of it as well as what I put into it. So it's been fun. And then the link top voice one came much later, and it's just I don't know how they decide that, but it's the LinkedIn gods come and they tell you, oh, we'd like to put you on the program, and obviously it's a good thing to be part of. You don't have to pay for your premium anymore, so it saves me a few dollars. So it's a nice accolade, and something hopefully I can keep for a while.
How often do you post?
I would say 2 or 3 times a week.
Okay.
So the way I think about it, if I'm reading some interesting things, then it's just one extra email or one extra send just happens to be a few more people. And it's just that best thing that happens that week. I mean, I use it as well when I look back and I'm trying to put, maybe a trends deck together. I can just look back at all my posts and pick out the things that I thought were interesting over the last few months. And it kind of builds into my sort of in a practical sense as well into the day.
It's fascinating to hear that, like you said, that it all kind of started from a competition back in your agency days. But to that point, so obviously you always haven't worked at Diageo for your entire career. Can you give us a little bit of context in regards to where it all started and your transition from the agency side to the client side with Diageo before that as well?
Yeah, like I said, I'm originally from the UK, so I started out in London in media. So started at PhD agency side, and that's when I think the H and the D were still around. So Durden and Horswell. So it was quite an interesting time to be part of that agency. And that lasted, so I stayed in London for maybe 4 years in that role. Then came out, traveled around Asia 6 months, planned to stay in Australia for maybe a year or two. And here I am kind of 16 years later. So that moved me into Group M, worked my way up through MediaCom and then into the agency as well. So in terms of like what I was doing over there as well, it was at the time when digital shelf was, becoming a big deal and, brands were looking for help and kind of expertise in that area. So we built and launched a digital shelf analytics product. So similar to something like Profitero today, but just within the agency. We're doing that for Mars, P&G, for Revlon and Fonterra. So they were the 4 brands we were working with. And that's kind of where I stepped into e-commerce and kind of the sort of digital commerce space. From there, obviously, at that time as well, before 2018, when Amazon came in a big way, we were all kind of waiting for Amazon to arrive. So it was about getting clients ready for that, so building the playbooks, getting people up to speed on what was happening over in the US or in Europe. And that's obviously when Amazon launched, that's when kind of retail media became a big thing. Obviously, we had players like Cartology and Woolworths around before that, but I guess it got serious once some of the big global players came in. And then from there, I've spent some time tech side as well. So I helped launch the Criteo retail media business over here. So launching that, working with a bunch of retailers directly and kind of building out their programs, building out their tech stack. Spent a bit of time sort of consulting, spent some time at Ubiquity building out their retail media products a couple of years ago, and Citrus Epsilon kind of business as well. And that kind of brings me up to date. So after that, obviously started at Diageo and had a look at things from the client side.
What compelled you to join Diageo and go to the brand side for the first time in your career?
Well, I think it's always been of interest. I think it's always good to see, where all of the product, the ideas, the briefs, the budgets are coming from. So you're further up that chain of events, let's say, when it comes to media and marketing. And it's an impressive company, like very strong brands. Obviously, it's an industry that is a fun one. Lots of people kind of participate in as well. So definitely an interesting piece. And then for me, obviously, it was predominantly around the role. So it was a retail media role, that was focused in the space that I've been spending a lot of time in, building up a lot of expertise. So for me, it was just a great chance to have that different view on the world, and hopefully just bring in some of that experience. So understanding how the tech works, understanding how the buying and the agencies kind of approach it, the JVPs that they're building and the partnerships they're building, hopefully all adds value.
Yeah. And when was the first time, if you reflect, that you worked on like retail media? It was I don't know if it was called retail media at the time, but
yeah, I would have said, I would have said e-commerce first. I guess retail media, as soon as we started building like partnerships with Amazon and Cartology locally, that's when it became a thing. And obviously I've been banging this drum for a while, as you've seen on LinkedIn. So I've been been definitely trying to keep at the forefront of that, and always looking for the next big thing. And just, you could tell, obviously, e-commerce and the efficacy of what retail media offers in terms of a media channel, that it was going to be a large opportunity and a big part of the business for brands. So, I've always been passionate about it, and glad to be I guess you would call a veteran these days.
So you've alluded to, obviously, like when Amazon kind of in essence became a thing, both in Australia, but I think even more generally. Would you say that that's kind of like the tipping point, or like, the launching point in terms of like, the boom behind retail media? Or are there any other events you think that have been like, let's say, particularly significant in terms of like, driving up the awareness, but also the application of it?
Well, I'd say at that point, there were already players in market. So we did have the Woolworths, we had eBay. eBay was actually the number one marketplace for a long time, and has an ad business. But I guess when you think about it as that industry and that the term retail media, that came from the growth of Amazon in the US, then into Europe. And I think that's probably the milestone, you can call it, for Australia as well. But then, every year you see 2 or 3 new networks launching. So it's not like we're finished yet on this sort of Cambrian explosion, as Colin Lewis calls it, which is a good description of it, of, multiple networks launching. And there's just new verticals coming online all the time. So still plenty of growth to go, I reckon.
Do you think that when you look at the retail media networks, there's a school of thought that says that Amazon is like still way, way, way ahead of the rest? I mean, it's a school of thought, but it's also a statistic as well, I think. What do you think?
Yeah. Well, they have the benefit of being a big tech player as well, don't they? So they've got all of the infrastructure and the ad tech itself, which is all owned and operated. And then obviously with the biggest marketplace. And then if you throw in things like Amazon Prime Video as well, where they've got the actual media assets, it is a pretty compelling kind of ecosystem to be part of, because as with retail media, you can track things all the way through to a sale. But if you own and operate all of that, it's very well integrated and connected. So look, they're still one of the leaders, definitely the leader in the space. And if you look at the spend numbers as well, it's a good majority of the spend still with them. But that doesn't mean you can't get involved. And, they don't cover all categories in the same way a vertical specialist could, in terms of the depth of what they could offer, the type of engagement they could get around certain categories. But they're still a big player, naturally.
And I'm curious, I guess there's obviously the supply side, and then there's the demand side in terms of like, I'm curious from your point of view, what do you think has been what's been like, let's say maybe the initial, but also let's call it the primary draw for brands in terms of like driving adoption of retail media? Is there anything that you think has kind of in essence been fundamental to really getting brands to jump on board in terms of adopting retail media?
Well, I think there's definitely a few different elements to it that are quite different. So retail media, the core strength of it is that data piece. So it's data for identifying audiences, for targeting those audiences, for measuring success and like closing the loop. And obviously that's the big part of the conversation when you're thinking retail media. The benefit is, it's that famous line around advertising, is that you just need to know it's working. And, if you can measure that all the way through to the sale, then that's obviously a key point. And especially as we've been through these periods of cookie deprecation and like tracking issues on the majority of media, it actually stands out as a good option there. But then there's also those long-standing relationships, right? So brands and manufacturers, they've been working with retailers for many years as well. So it's not new in that sense. It's like a very established old, and tight relationship in many cases, that is just becoming more digitized, more available, and adding more transparency to some of those opportunities as well. So that's definitely a key part of it. That is a foundation of what retail media is built on.
And do you consider retail media a proper advertising channel, or is it a tax on suppliers?
Well, I wouldn't call it a channel anyway, because it's multi-channel, right? You've got on-site, you've got off-site, many different types of off-site and in-store. So it's definitely a multi-channel thing. Look, I mean, there is that relationship with the retailer where they're, in the past, they would be buying something from the manufacturer, all of the stock and the product. And it is a twist on that, right? So now the advertiser is buying something back off the retailer. So whether you see it as the tax, I mean, I wouldn't. I think the measurement that's available, the way it's planned around campaigns, as opposed to some of those longer term commercial relationships where you might have a commercial arrangement that's locked in for a year or longer. Retail media is often based on campaigns. It has to be based on results. And if you're not driving those results, then there should be an option to shift that spend within the retail media ecosystem that retailer offers, or maybe even out of it, if it needs to be.
That's interesting. I agree with you completely. I mean, for me, it's always fascinating to think about how, like you said, the relationship has kind of evolved, in that it used to be that, it was a buyer seller in terms of retailer brand, and now the two roles have switched. And we've actually seen some of this play out in terms of some of the candid commerce discussions we've had, where we've had panels with individuals from retailers and brands discussing that. And we've also had one of your former colleagues from Criteo, who was actually in the audience, who kind of played that third agency participant as well. So it's really, really fascinating to watch the dynamics of that at play.
Think about as well as that traditional retailer manufacturer relationship, you do have, the likes of quick commerce players where there isn't that sale, when they're not buying any product from us, they're just picking it up from another retailer. So the relationship there is, the center of gravity is all around retail media, and it's actually a different type of relationship there. So there are nuances there that make, retail media. And if we then expand the definition to commerce media, then, we're talking to banks and, other players in the field which have great transactional data, but we can't have retail relationship then.
Yeah, that's true. It does. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we could spend an entire episode just talking about that in terms of like some of the psychology that's at play there in regards to like, how those collaborations work, for sure. I want to go back to something you said earlier with regards to, in essence, the continued growth of retail media. And you mentioned the continued proliferation of retail media networks. And, I don't know what number we're up to these days, but obviously that number just continues to grow and grow, with 2 to 3 added, every few months, it seems. Do you think it makes sense that at some point, rather than having this continued expansion of available networks, that there will be some form of consolidation? Or what do you see in the future in regards to like how these retail media networks will continue to play out in regards to like availability of new networks versus consolidation?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a limit, and I'm not sure how far off we are in that sense, but I guess there's two things. Like you might have consolidation, but that's somewhat unlikely that retailers themselves, their whole business is going to consolidate. So it's going to be more focused on the media elements and those retail media elements. And I think it's, rather than consolidating as businesses, it's more consolidating the actual inventory into an area where it can be bought through a management platform that can access multiple different retailers. And we've already got that. So the likes of Pantview and Sky, where you can log in, you can book your search, your social, your retail media all in one place. But I think we're going to get even more availability, let's say, of retail media in different platforms. So we know the trade desk have lots of relationships with multiple retailers. We know people like Criteo have multiple retailers in their platform. So the more that this web of different inventory sources is brought together through an SSP or through a single point of entry, just makes it easier. Because that's the problem with the fragmentation, is the friction and the number of accounts you'd have to log into. So if you as a buyer or as an agency only have to log into maybe that main account, and then some main accounts for Amazon or Walmart, if that's your retailers, and it becomes a manageable number, and you can sort of scale it, through a single platform, but across multiple retailers. So I think there'll be tech solutions, and we see it with offsite. I mean, that is a programmatic space anyway. DSPs are the key way to sort of the entry point for that. So I think we'll get more of that for the on-site piece as well, and in store as well. Programmatic digital out of home is definitely the way to go as people buy those digital spots.
And you've probably seen on LinkedIn in the past weeks that there's like a debate out there around, there's an incumbent that has like a lot of retail media networks and manages like the demand side and the supply side and like the end-to-end, like a one-size-fits-all type of solution that a lot of retailers have adopted, versus like other ad servers, which are more like part of like a more composable solution, so more specialized in ad serving. Thoughts? One size fits all or composable? And also with Amazon lurking in, we read recently that Macy's has adopted Amazon's technology. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely an interesting one, seeing them sort of get into bed with Amazon, who are a key retail competitor. But when it comes to accessing demand, I guess that's the reason why they've done it, and it will open up a much easier path to that retail media inventory. I think as the space matures and like composability becomes easier, I think it will be more of a composable space where you've got the best of breed or point solutions that do a really good job for you. I guess the bit where it gets difficult is to track what's happening across those different elements. Like, I'll use some examples, but they're just for illustrative purposes. But if you had a trade desk campaign, say for offsite, and a Criteo campaign for on-site, like how do you connect up the dots where you expose someone with an ad through one platform and then they've been exposed again on-site through another platform, and then a sale happens? Where do you apply the credit, and like how do you track that through? So I think there are challenges there, and I'm sure we'll get technology solutions to solve for that. But that's the benefit, I guess, of the full stack, right? If you're buying offsite, on-site, and tracking the sale all in one platform, then as a brand you can understand the full journey.
And is there benefits of composable, do you think?
Well, I think so, because they'd be best in breed then. So you're going to have the best platform with the best audience availability, or the best way to plug into those management tools. Like, there are always going to be benefits by if a specialist player is really doubling down on a space and building out the technology and has a specialist solution that can offer something extra. Then that's much easier if you're only focused on that one area of the ecosystem. If you have to create it for everything, then it becomes a bit more difficult. So yeah, that's how the startups win, right? They can build and really focus on a challenge or a problem that the bigger guys perhaps is further down on their list.
So I want to introduce the voice of the consumer into this. We've obviously talked about some of the benefits that retailer gains from a retail media offering. Obviously, brands can benefit both from an efficacy standpoint, but also in terms of availability of data as well. I'm curious to get your perspective in regards to what is the benefit for consumers from retail media.
Well, I guess you start with what is the benefit of advertising overall for consumers. I mean, obviously it pays for services on the open web, right? So you get free services because you're being targeted with ads, and I think there's probably an extension of that into retail where it can pay for promotions and discounts and cheaper products potentially because there's another profit line for that retailer. But yeah, I guess it's about serving up personalized products and the products that consumer or shopper is looking for. It's suggesting complementary buys and like doing that cross sale, adding in new products into the mix for a customer. So I think in all the same ways that the advertising helps customers, I think retail media does. It's actually more native and more useful in the sense that you're already at that point of sale. You're actually shopping. So you're looking for products, right? That's the whole benefit of retail media, is you're giving them something that they're already looking for. It's not just some random ad for something that is unrelated. It's actually exactly what they're doing in that moment.
I was going to say, in essence, it removes a bit of the clutter that maybe traditional advertising that's more for a mass audience would create for people, right? In terms of having to cut through all that to figure out what's actually relevant to me and my situation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about giving them something that is native to the experience as well. So you've searched for shampoo or for whiskey at the top of the search bar, and they're the products that we're showing you. And it just happens to be that some are being promoted over others, but they're still 100% relevant for that search.
You said something interesting before, that the core piece of retail media is data for brands. What about like the promise of it being like a full funnel marketing proposition? I mean, do you think it can compete like with big marketing campaigns like TV?
Well, that's the thing with retail media. Like we said, it's multiple channels anyway. So it's not either or. It's like you would buy your CTV or TV campaign, but you would use shopper data to target it in a better way and in a more efficient way. And then you would know at the end of the process that the person who saw that TV ad, if it's a connected TV ad, actually bought something. So it's not that it's competing or doing something different from a full funnel campaign in, the space that isn't retail media. It's just adding extra dimensions to the targeting and measurement.
No, that makes sense. I do tend to think that it can, in essence, be complementary as opposed to a substitute for it. That being said, at some point, it is competing for that same budget. So I think being able to demonstrate the effectiveness of it in terms of actually, how this attributed sales is really key, right? I'm just thinking, like as somebody who kind of looks across different types of advertising, to me, that's obviously one of the things that draws my eye, right? Was like, can I actually attribute this to a sale in terms of, like, is it creating the impact that I need in store?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, not all advertising obviously is designed to drive a sale.
Sure.
So in, mass awareness or brand awareness space, it might not be the objective. But yeah, when you think about it, on-site is definitely owned and operated retailer inventory and data. Whereas off-site, it's retailers' data, but it could be in any one of those channels. So there's actually partnership happening there. So you're serving it out on the open web, you're serving it out in connected TV, maybe in social. So that's where it comes together with, I guess, those broader campaigns.
What do you think will matter more over the next 5 years in retail media? Ad tech innovation, retailer data quality, standardization, or something else? Also curious to know, like, from a brand perspective, what would be like your ask to retailers?
Yeah, well, I think next 5 years, we will see, like, on-site feels like the space that obviously always moves first with retailers. So it's really native. It's high margin for retailers as well. And it's generally where a lot of them start. So I think over the next few years, it's going to be more of the growth in the off-site space. So I'm personally very excited about the connected TV space, growing and becoming a much bigger part of retail media. If you think about it, that's kind of like marketing nirvana. It's got the audio, visual, mass awareness elements of TV, but then the sort of really attributable measurement and closed loop reporting of retail media. So as those two things come together, it's going to be, obviously a very powerful space. Standardization, obviously a big topic that everyone does talk about and still needs to be solved to some degree. But I think we're moving in the right direction. Obviously the IAB and some of the industry bodies are really working hard to build those standards and guidelines for retailers, and more and more are coming on board. And I think as retailers move away from move into non-endemic spaces, move into like trying to get marketing budgets as opposed to just trade and shopper budgets, then they need to play in the same way and within the same guidelines that a lot of them standard publishers work to. So I think that's where standardization will have to become a core part of their business. And then we haven't mentioned the AI yet, but I think that's definitely a big space. And as you know, I'm kind of following this space myself. I'm quite interested in it, but we're seeing AI already in creative development and versioning and building out all of those personalization assets, if we call them that. And then within the media platforms themselves, there's a lot of tools where you can optimize towards a goal or an outcome that is driven and delivered by AI. So they're more the today spaces in AI, but obviously it's a fast moving space. So we're going to see a lot more coming down the pipeline.
Well, I imagine, again, we could probably spend an entire episode diving into the different, opportunities that AI presents for retail media in terms of some of the, things you've mentioned. But we'll save that for a follow up episode where we dive into that with you and maybe some other folks on AI.
I'm curious to know, by the way, you mentioned something on Nirvana, and I can see a Nirvana poster in your background, like a small frame with the Nirvana logo and one with the Wu-Tang Clan and a guitar. I think it's kind of compulsory to ask you, like, what type of music are you into?
Oh, it's a pretty good mix, as you can tell from kind of what's behind me. But yeah, it depends what I'm doing, I guess. If I'm working, then it can't have lyrics in, but a nice bit of ambient, down tempo, some drum or bass even is good just to kind of get your flow going. But then, yeah, obviously bands as well. I'm going to go Oasis are heading down under, so they'll be showing up at some in a few months. So that'll be a fun one to get out to. But yeah, definitely a good mix of music. So some hip hop as well, as you can see.
Yeah, I was gonna say he likes good music, Daniel. I'm all in every one of the bands that he just mentioned. So we're probably aging ourselves in terms of the demographic that we're in.
There's no embarrassment in liking good rock, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Roger, this has been great. And like I said, we could spend an entire separate episode on just a couple of the topics that you've touched on with regards to retail media and the opportunities that AI presents in that space as well. But conscious of your time, particularly with it being later in Australia, we have one more question for you. And it's a question that we ask all of our guests, which is we ask them to kind of put themselves into a time machine and to go back to the beginning of their careers. And if they could give their younger selves one piece of advice at the start of the career, what would it be?
Yeah, I think we kind of touched a little bit on this earlier, but I would just say put yourself out there a little bit more and a little bit sooner. So that's putting yourself out there in terms of like sharing your thoughts and your thinking out there like I do on LinkedIn, but also just saying yes to things. So if you get invited to work on a pitch, say if I was agency side, or launch a new product, or work on a new partnership with a partner now in this role, then they're the kind of things I would say just say yes. If it makes sense to you. So I think that's probably what I would tell myself. Obviously, I'd probably do that nowadays, but I should have done it sooner, I reckon.
Is there any advice that because people like, it's a type of thing that people are not a KPI, people are not trained for it. Is there any advice you would give to people on how to start?
Well, I think it has to be close to your heart in terms of like, it has to be something you're passionate about and that you're interested in. But that's all it is for me, really. It's things that I'm reading anyway, things that I'm interested in that I just create into something that's shareable. So I think as long as it's that, then it's sustainable. And I guess the other piece of advice is about consistency. It's kind of doing something, good over a longer period of time, I think is where it gets you to somewhere new. So yeah, keep at it if you're going to get started as well.
Cool. Fantastic. So Ephraim, takeaways. What are your key takeaways of the conversation?
I mean, like I said before, Roger and I have only had the chance to meet in person one other time early this year. So it was just kind of fascinating to actually hear a little bit about your background in terms of like getting your start at PhD and your time with Criteo. I mean, there's a lot of things that next time we are together, if it's in person or just on a Zoom call, I have to pick your brain about in terms of some of those experiences. But I think specific to this conversation, for me, one of the things that I draw to as I'm kind of looking at my notes here is when you mentioned the fact that retail media is not a channel, right? It is by definition or just by nature multi-channel, and it plays across different places. So to consider it just a sole channel is probably shortchanging it a bit. So that was one thing for me that I think is something that I'm going to take away and make sure that I educate myself on, but educate others who I speak to who aren't necessarily, let's say, native to the retail media space.
Yeah, I think it was interesting how you said that core piece of retail media is data. I think because sometimes as you said, it's a media channel, multiple media channels, but the data piece is still very important. So I think that retailers need to brands need to consolidate and just like maximize the opportunity there. I think that's maybe that sometimes they forget.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think, to me, it feels like a bit of an unscratched itch that I have in regards to kind of really getting into some of that data. I guess the luxury I have is that I happen to work at the same company as Roger, so I get the chance to be able to kind of, explore some of those things further from a work perspective. So I'm excited to do that. The other thing that I took away from our conversation that's going to stick in my brain is we were talking about, again, the proliferation of retail media networks, and we talked about, possibility of consolidation. And for me, what's fascinating, again, coming to it as somebody who isn't native to the space like you are, Roger, is, your comment around consolidation of inventory, not retailers. And it makes perfect sense, right? Which they're not going to all of a sudden say the Tesco retail media offering and the Carrefour retail media offering are all of a sudden going to combine. And that's a bit of an extreme example, but the fact that it is more about the consolidation of inventory and thinking about how tech can provide platforms like you mentioned PackView, but that to me I think is an interesting one because when we think about it in terms of other places where you have a lot of service offerings that pop up over time and eventually there's too many and they have to consolidate, we just kind of tend to think of like companies merging together, and that won't be the case here because of the fact you're talking about established retailers for whom this is just one service offering, but obviously there's other things they do as well. So tech is going to be the interesting play here.
And it's more like the general narrative, no? I think that you brought in, Roger, a different perspective into this, which I thought was interesting. And last but not least, if I can add it, it's the fact of offsite being like, for you, like the main area of development of retail media in the next, did we say 5 years? That's probably a bit ambitious on our end. And as things are now, where every 6 months, things change a lot. Roger, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for finally joining us.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for the chat. Good to, chew the fat on retail media.
Fantastic. Efrain, good to see you as well. I don't know where I'll see you next, but I think it's coming soon, probably.
Well, enjoy Amsterdam while you're there.
I will. Well, thanks to our audience as well for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great one.